Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching a brand new edition of India's World with me, Frank Razan Pereira. Saudi Arabia will be the third strategic partner of the $62 billion China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a senior Pakistani minister announced on Thursday, soon after Pak Prime Minister Imran Khan returned from his first foreign trip to the cash-rich kingdom. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is the flagship project of the multi-billion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative, a pet project of Chinese President Xi Jinping aimed at enhancing Beijing's influence around the world through China-funded infrastructure projects. China has rejected accusations that its financial backing for the CPEC was a debt trap that could compromise cash-strapped Pakistan's sovereignty. The CPEC is the fastest-moving and flagship part of President Xi's Global Belt and Road Initiative. The CPEC aims to construct and upgrade the transportation network, energy projects, a deep water port at Gwadar and special economic zones to eventually support Pakistan's industrial development as a manufacturing hub by 2030. On this edition of India's World, we will analyze if CPEC is running into trouble and what implications will it have on China's ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. Joining me on the program today are T.C. Rangachari, former ambassador, Srikant Kondapalli, Professor Chinese Studies, JNU, and Major General Ashwini Sivach, defense expert. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of India's World. Professor, I'd like to begin the program with you. Let's first try and put into perspective why Pakistan has reached out to Saudi Arabia to be a part of CPEC.
Well, traditionally, Pakistan has been going to Saudi Arabia for bailout packages whenever it is in trouble, financial trouble, as an Islamic factor, card, etc. They have been going to Saudi Arabia. When they looked around, previously the US was financing them almost like $36 billion in the last decade that they have financed the Pakistani operations. As Christine Fair mentioned in one of our accounts on the subject. But much of this, it was supposed to go for counter-terrorism. It has also gone for other expenditures, including the army and so on and so forth. So there has been a cut in the US aid for Pakistan on this count. So since the Pakistan economy is not doing well, they have now faced the debt crisis and rescheduling of the IMF package. So in this context, they have approached the US before US has shut the doors. They have gone to China, but China never financed Pakistani revenue expenditures. They have been able to provide for manufacturing centers or infrastructure projects or aid projects, but they have not given cash to the Pakistanis in hand, never. For example, Nawaz Sharif wanted a $240 million bailout package when he was the Prime Minister. He went to China, China snubbed his offer. So he went to Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia bailed him out in that time. So this is no surprise event. Saudi Arabia has been a traditional backer of Pakistan. So I think it's quite obvious that they have made this arrangement. Since in the background of the CPEC, which is now becoming an issue in Pakistan, for example, the new Prime Minister Imran Khan had suggested for restudying of many of these projects because of the environmental concerns, because of the debt issues, because of other problems, such as, for example, last November in 2017, they cancelled the Diama Basha Dam project, which is almost $12 billion. That's a pretty huge. Then there is a King Ho company from China, which has cancelled about $16 billion project in Balochistan because of the insurgency in that province. So many of these projects are now getting into trouble and the costs are mounting. So in this context, they have gone to the traditional players who can bail them out. So Saudi Arabia is an obvious choice for Pakistan.
Ambassador, do you see Saudi Arabia joining CPEC, and is it in Saudi Arabia's interest?
Well, first, this terminology BRI, actually that's a phrase that is used only in English. The Chinese phrase is still one belt, one road. So I think in the interests of being accurate, it's preferable to use one belt, one road rather than the BRI to describe the effort. Now let's disaggregate this problem before we get to Saudi Arabia. The point is that virtually all countries, specifically so in developing countries in Asia, we are all looking for money for development of infrastructure and so on. You remember former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh used to talk in terms of India's requirements of about $1 trillion over a period of 10 years and so on for infrastructure development. So one part of it is that funds are required, and Chinese are saying that we can make those funds available. Second part is on what do you spend, how do you spend, and whether the projects that you take up for infrastructure development, whether they are viable or not. There the experience is very mixed, and it's not only in the case of Pakistan. Pakistan, of course, the PTI, that is Imran Khan's party, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, even before the elections had said that many of the projects of the CPEC are weighted against Pakistani interests, against the interests of Pakistani business, Pakistani industry, etc. That some of the terms are more favorable to the Chinese, and that, of course, he was blaming the previous government, the PML, Pakistan Muslim League, Nawaz Sharif government, for being very bad negotiators. And he had promised, the manifesto of the party had promised that when they come to power, they'll renegotiate to the benefit of Pakistan. The third thing is that insofar as many of the projects outside of CPEC are concerned, they are also having these problems of, debt trap, etc. and so on. We have seen what happened in the case of Sri Lanka and Hambantota. Recently, Mahathir's visit, cancellation of projects in Malaysia. Same thing is the problem. Similar problems are there in Indonesia, in Laos and so on, with railway-related projects that the Chinese have proposed. So that is where the sustainability, viability part of it comes in. Now, when you look at all of this, and you see the new government's position, what are the options before it? As Professor Kundapalli was mentioning, Saudi Arabia is a traditional ally on whom Pakistan has depended, not only by funding in terms of cash, but also in the past, oil has been given to Pakistan, other kinds of funding has been provided to Pakistan, even for purchases of weapons, etc. and so on. So Saudi Arabia is naturally a very a target which is well worth exploiting for Pakistan's advantage. Whether Saudi Arabia would join what is CPEC, that is the projects that the Chinese have conceived, Chinese have developed, where negotiations have taken place and agreements have reached in which certain terms and conditions have been accepted between the government of Pakistan and government of China. I don't see the advantage to Saudi Arabia in becoming part of that process, because as a study that was done by the Vivekananda International Foundation a couple of years ago showed, several of these projects, the first charge on revenues arising from those projects and those investments was to go to pay back China. Either the money would go into an escrow account and Chinese company which was involved would get the money, or there would be other ways in which the Chinese side would get compensated first. And given the past economic difficulties that Pakistan has had, in the way in which they have approached solutions to it, it seems highly unlikely that a third party would come in order to pay somebody else. And therefore, if Saudis are going to come in development of Pakistan and in taking up projects, which is a completely separate thing, yes, that is entirely possible. Although we should also note that, in earlier there was a mention of cash-rich Saudi Arabia. Actually, Saudi Arabia itself is having problems in terms of generating cash and so on, in terms of its own future sustainability, because the oil revenues are uncertain. So therefore, whether the Saudis would come into Pakistan in order to join in projects which are primarily going to benefit the Chinese side, according to Pakistanis themselves, is a questionable proposition.
Right.
Yes, they could come in developing, economic projects and infrastructure projects, whatever else, between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan as part of a bilateral partnership.
Right, and not a trilateral agreement or something on those lines is what you're suggesting, Ambassador General. As far as Saudi Arabia being involved in CPEC itself is concerned, in an eventuality, if it does really happen, is that something that should concern us?
See, first of all, we have to see it that why has the Pakistan gone for Saudi Arabia? What is happening is that everyone is now assessing it, that whatever pact which they have signed with China, as far as China-Pakistan economic corridor is concerned, it is a huge debt which is going to come in time to come, and Pakistan will not able to pay that, and it will be in debt trap like many other countries. Haman Tota has come, another one. So therefore, as on today, viability of all these projects which have been there were also doubtful, and that's why Imran Khan also raised the alarm. He said that certain projects have been signed which is favoring China, not favoring Pakistan. They need to be renegotiated, but that did not happen because there is a pressure of China. So as far as now Saudi Arabia is getting into it, 2-3 things are falling very clear as far as Pakistan is concerned. Pakistan is now have a huge debt. Today their foreign exchange is that they can't even buy 2 months of import. It is less than $10 billion, less than even Afghanistan. They are now taken a loan of $92 billion from the various creditors which they have to pay back. So now with this China-Pakistan economic corridor also coming, the debt is going to increase. So the Pakistan already economically weak state, it has been put in a grey list by Financial Action Task Force, and if it does not improve on money laundering and terrorist funding, chances of it getting into a blacklist is also there, where only Iran and your North Korea is there. So therefore, as far as Pakistan is concerned, he wanted an emotional support in terms of Saudi Arabia, and possibly he thinking that some investment, rather than China doing all complete $62 billion, let's say that Saudi Arabia may also able to help it. Because after all these projects are not going through Saudi Arabia, they are only going to Gwadar. What China was interested in, that China very cleverly has gone from Xinjiang, that is which is a landlocked province, which is backward. They gain because most of the items will come from there, the engineer will become there, workforce will be from there. So the complete investment and will be from the China. Pakistanis only will be used in menial jobs and only on the security job. And then there is another clause, whatever power and all which will be produced, the Pakistanis are bound to buy it. There is a clause on that. So therefore, as a Pakistani realized it, that the debt is going to be surmounted and it may not be able to pay back. So they thought that Saudi Arabia is one of the best friends which is there, which has helped them in past also, mainly on energy security. It has not given money more than it has given oil and all. So they have gone to Saudi Arabia. Possibly they need it, someone who can support them in case they come into debt trap. So
Right.
more of an emotional, things have to be still unfolded, because it is just too early to say as to how Saudi Arabia will involve in China-Pakistan economic corridor. The Fawad Chaudhry, the information minister, has said that today Saudi Arabia has become a partner. Now, what does this mean? How does it unfold? Time will only tell.
Sure. Talking about Imran Khan, Professor, right from the beginning, he's maintained that the terms at which Pakistan has agreed to CPEC has been unfavorable as far as Pakistan is concerned. But is he really in a position to do anything at this point in time, or is Pakistan too deeply entrenched in China's scheme of things in Pakistan?
That's true. Recently, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi visited Islamabad, and there is also the Pakistani Army Chief visit to Beijing last week. Both coincided with high-level discussions in reiterating that all-weather kind of friendship between the two sides. There is so much institutionally between the two. Of course, the Chinese best bet here is the Pakistani army rather than the civilian leadership. To the extent that the civilian leadership is also under the military overall control, to that extent, the Chinese are kind of satisfied. But Imran Khan's problem is how to fix the economy, and the economy seems to be in free fall, with the other issues also catching up: terrorism, drug trafficking. You have also the various fiscal tendencies within Pakistan, in addition to the debt and other issues triggered by the CPEC projects. To that extent, I think Imran Khan, his choices are very limited in nature, and if he rejects the Chinese projects, then he will have to, face flack for his own chair, from his own chair. Secondly, there is also the Islamic card that he has to play in order to, for example, there is the Uyghur factor, which the which the Chinese have been insisting that Imran should downplay that card. But being a homegrown person with those agendas, I think there is a lot on that Islamic card, especially in relation to Xinjiang. As far as the Saudi Arabia is concerned, I think it will create a lot of problems between India and Saudi Arabia. We have to see the fine print on what exactly Saudi Arabia has signed in vis-a-vis the CPEC projects. If it is related to the Pakistan occupied Kashmir areas, then I think we will have a lot of tension between India and Saudi Arabia. In the OAC, they have been raising Kashmir issue now and then, but it is kind of dormant, overall dormant, to the extent that privately they do say that this is because of the Islamic constituency or other related pressures that they are raising the Kashmir issue. If in the fine print, if the Saudi Arabians are financing any of the projects in POK specifically, I think there will be a lot of tension between India and Saudi Arabia. Remember, India and Saudi Arabia also are strategic partners, much as Saudi Arabia and China are strategic partners. To that extent, I think there will be a lot of tension in this relationship. We have to see the fine print on what exactly is the role, responsibility of Saudi Arabia in the CPEC projects, specifically in relation to POK.
Right. Broadening the scope of the discussion, Ambassador, the BRI or One Belt, One Road is an ambitious project that Xi Jinping wants it to succeed, at any cost. But is it going to, bring about his end as well? Because he's facing a lot of flack from within, the Communist Party in China itself. So is he punching above his weight at this point in time?
Well, that's a matter of judgment. The fact is that, this is a vehicle by which China is seeking to utilize its surplus industrial capacity, its surplus labor, and the surplus comparative advantages that it has in order to develop and exploit markets outside China, which it's not able to do currently because of not enough domestic consumption. Now, therefore, this is one way in which China can export, and there are a number of countries in which China has taken up projects, and the same problem is there in virtually all of these countries, and therefore this question of viability, sustainability becomes something which is very key, which is a key to assessing whether or not a project should be entered into by the recipient country. Insofar as domestic criticism is concerned, again it has to be weighed at two levels. One is, part of it is of course legitimate, because I think it is possible to argue, now look at a rich country like the United States is arguing more or less the same thing. They are saying that why is it that our taxpayer money should be utilized for the development of other countries when there is pressing requirement here in our own country. So that is an argument which is being made not just in China, it is being made elsewhere. To what extent it is effective criticism in political terms in China is something which is not very clear at this point. Certainly Xi Jinping is very much in control of the party apparatus, he is very much in control of the state apparatus, he is very much in control of the country. And insofar as, you might have seen recently Warren Buffett had some very good things to say about the way in which China has developed, for example, electric-based transportation. Again, there are some very good things that have been said in regard to artificial intelligence work and development that has been done in China. Now, in the future's technology, so to speak, the Chinese are spending a great deal of money and they are getting a fair amount of success. And they will surely want to use this not only for development and consumption in China, but also would want to utilize it for export purposes. Now, therefore, when you look at all the money that is being invested in a variety of different sectors, partly domestically, partly outside, what kind of a balance do you draw? That this is the percentage that we are going to use for foreign purposes. And if you look at, just now, most recently, Xi Jinping had promised an additional $60 billion for Africa.
Yeah.
When you're holding something like $3 trillion of reserves, And according to several calculations that I have seen, something like 1.8 to $2 trillion is absolutely essential insofar as China's own requirements are concerned, imports, etc. and so on. So that still leaves you with something like $1 trillion of cushion. You look at the United States-China trade, even after the imposition of this 10% tariff in the first round and the threat of a 25% tariff coming up, in the last quarter, the Chinese managed to increase their trade surplus with the United States. Now, given that kind of a situation where you're sitting on a huge pile of cash, what is it that you're going to do? Actually, if I were in any position to advise the Chinese, I would say, one, apart from looking at sustainability, etc., if they are truly interested in developing goodwill, using this money, using their resources of all kinds, in order to promote their own interests, goodwill towards China, friendship with China, etc., then the way they should do it is to offer it on terms that is attractive. For example, the Japanese, the loan that the Japan has given us for the high-speed rail.
Train.
This high-speed train, the project for which Japan has given us a loan. It's on very, very friendly terms. It's on very soft terms. Now, if the Chinese want to utilize their money and export their surplus capacities and still want to use that in order to earn goodwill, then that is one way they can look at, where they do it on soft terms.
Right.
But if you're going to do it on commercial LIBOR plus kinds of terms, then obviously there are going to be difficulties, and at some point or the other, the recipient country is going to say, this is not to my advantage, as Pakistan seems to be doing just now, and going into a review, or Mahathir seems to have done by cancelling projects and so on.
Is more of this going to happen in the near future, General, where more countries are going to look away from China, because at the end of the day, China's hard policy does not seem to be striking a chord with some of these nations?
No doubt about it. First, let me point out on that issue. As far as Saudi Arabia and India is concerned, in case Saudi Arabia is going to invest in those projects which are in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, which is basically threatening our sovereignty and territorial integrity, then bound to have a clash between India and Saudi Arabia. Because as on today, Saudi Arabia is coming quite close to India. It was very close to Pakistan, but of late it is maintaining a balance. The acid test is BRICS. In the BRICS, they have voted against Pakistan. In both China and Saudi Arabia both have voted against it. It was only Turkey. So to that extent, they were playing our cards, and Modi has gone there. King Salman was also favoring India. So therefore, they were, but in case if they trying to invest money, to that extent is fine, but they are part of that project which is there in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, this will be a clash between interest between Saudi Arabia and India. As far as this One Belt, One Road initiative concerned, China stand to gain. China, please see it from where they are getting all this investment, or from where their projects are coming. The western portion, the southern portion of China is not developed. Now, by making this One Belt, One Road, they are ensuring Xinjiang and Yunnan province it also get developed, because after all, One Belt, One Road initiative, a lot of road construction activities also take place in China. So, indirectly, it is also developing that. Now, as far as Yunnan is concerned, one knows it, Yunnan has got a scarcity of oil. They are now going to Myanmar, in Rakhine province where the port is made. So, from there, the oil will be taken there, and this will cut down almost 3 times. So, as far as China is concerned, China stands to gain domestically also when it is going to project. Right. Same way in Xinjiang, it has been seen that the western portion of China is not developed. It is basically a Muslim-dominated area, and from there they are now coming to Gwadar port. They are getting 2 things. One is that Indian Ocean water work, and second thing is that since they have a lot of surplus, they need markets, and markets is in Middle East and Africa. That is the place where they will be sending.
Right.
But as far as China is concerned, China is playing its own game well.
Sure.
And now, as on today, it was Pakistan, possibly whichever these pacts were signed, were not favoring Pakistan, because the loan which was there was on terms and conditions which was not favoring it.
Right.
Because it was a higher side. And that's why they were telling to renegotiate. Having Saudi Arabia come in, possibly they are thinking that some of those projects may be invested by Saudi Arabia.
All right, closing comments now from all my guests. I'm going to ask you to be brief. Talking about Africa, Professor, anger seems to be mounting in Zambia as well, where protests have erupted on the streets, and the people of Zambia are very upset with, Beijing's presence in that particular country. So, that having been said, what are China's options really as far as a BRI is concerned?
Well, as reflected in the white paper in March 2015 on the BRI, they mentioned about policy coordination, trade promotion, connectivity, financial integration, and people-to-people contact. In the last 5 years, China made some inroads. Policy coordination with a summit-level meeting last May in Beijing. Yet there are issues that needs to be addressed in policy coordination in relation to other countries. For example, the India-China joint statements do not mention about the BRI projects at all. None of the joint statements mention about it, including US, Japan, other countries, bigger countries. So that's where the policy coordination also has to happen.
Right.
Of course, China is doing a lot. For example, the EU 16+1 is one where they have mobilized the Central European countries and East European countries in that format of connectivity, etc. Secondly, in terms of trade promotion, the recent tariff increases by the Trump administration is having an impact on business sentiments, business environment.
Sure.
So actually the Chinese government itself is saying that the growth rate will fall from 6.9 to roughly about 5% this year. So which means we probably see shrinking. As such, the global trade is shrinking.
Sure.
So this is a business sentiment related on trade promotion. Thirdly, on
Sorry to interrupt, but limited time. Ambassador, troubled times for China ahead, do you think, or this is just,
Part of it is something which is almost inevitable in any country's evolution. The kind of things that Professor Kondapalli was mentioning, slowing down in the rates of growth, etc. Once you get to a certain level, it's not that easy for you to be growing at double-digit rates. It's just not possible. But overall, as I said earlier, in case the Chinese want to develop good friendly relationship, then they have to weigh interests and see whether they want only to look at Chinese interests or also look at the interests of the other side and see how they can be a mutuality of interest. And if that can be worked out, if that can be integrated, then certainly the Chinese could move forward with the Belt and Road projects and use that as a leverage.
Right.
But to a very large extent, it will depend upon how the recipient countries view the Chinese, whether as providential helpers or as predators.
Right. General, conclude the show for us with your closing remarks.
As far as China is concerned, I think it stands to gain everywhere. It is going in East Europe, against the wishes of Europeans, because they are saying that East Europe will be now having more influence of China. It is going through Central Asia, against the wishes of Russia, because that is traditionally Central Asian states were part of Russia. Now, as far as wherever they have gone, over a period of time, those countries have realized that they are put in a debt trap, whether it is in Malaysia, that Eastern Rail Corridor, that now the Prime Minister, which is there, Mohammed Mutar, he said, no, it is to be scrapped off. The reason is that the investment is at the cost of a very high rate.
Right.
And therefore, it is only favoring China, not favoring the country which is gone. They get market, and basically whatever loan which is taken, it is under terms and condition which is not favoring this country.
Of the Chinese.
And hence most of the country want to renegotiate all these One Belt, One Road projects.
All right. On that note, then, we'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of India as well. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. We'd like to hear from you as well. For your feedbacks and suggestions, do mail us at indiasworld.feedback@gmail.com. You can also tweet to us using our Twitter handles at FRP09 and at Rajya Sabha TV. That's it from me. See you again next time.